Why don't you both reflect on what the campus and the college was like back in the mid to late 60s compared to the campus that's out there today? And Paul, why don't you start?
Well, it's quite a bit smaller than it was, I guess, when I started as a freshman. There was around maybe 1,500 students at that time. And when I graduated, there was around 3,000 students. That's before it really got large, the campus got large. But at that time, you might not have known everybody's name, but you knew everybody on campus, the students, their faces and so forth, but you might not know their names.
Okay, it's a little bigger than a big high school, but not,
yes,
not too much. And what do you say about that, Eva?
Well, the atmosphere, the friendliness is still the same. It's always been a real friendly campus, and Paul and I started the same year. And I remember specifically the King Johnson building because I worked in Walnut Hall and for Mrs. Chenault, and my job was to sit at a desk in Walnut Hall, and if you opened the doors, I had to shoo you out. You weren't allowed in Walnut Hall unless a student was
you were
not.
The Walnut Hall police. Huh?
Yes, and of course it's very different now, but that was sacred ground almost, and it was interesting. And I got to meet a lot of the faculty because of the faculty lounge. They would come through, and I would have to make sure they were faculty. And of course, after I got to recognize faces and know all their names, and it was okay, but they were very strict.
So you sat kind of outside the faculty lounge, or?
No, it was on the opposite side where they have the distinguished alumni.
Okay, yeah.
There was a desk sitting right there on that hallway.
Did you have to ask faculty for IDs?
No, no. No.
But Walnut Hall was just used exclusively for receptions and
receptions. And if you worked there, then you had to serve at the receptions, and we had to make sure we were dressed to the 9th degree, even with our white gloves on at that time. And such a difference in the dress code now, because we weren't allowed, we wore dresses.
I expect many of you watching this program only remember Richmond as a vibrant community with lots of stores and restaurants, but the Richmond of the mid-1950s wasn't quite like that, was it? What choices do you remember if you had in restaurants and stores when you were undergraduates, Eva?
Well, Bell's was the popular place. If you could walk out to Bell's, it was a little restaurant out in front of the cemetery by the railroad track.
Okay, hadn't heard of that one before.
We could climb across, go through the cemetery. You had to do a little climbing, and you couldn't be quite the size we are now. You had to be rather slender to get through some of the areas. And we'd walk over to Bell's, and it was a unique restaurant. You went to the back, you wrote down what you wanted, you put it on a nail, wrote your name on the back of the ticket. When it was ready, they called out your name, and you got your food. And if you had money to pay, you paid when you left. If you didn't, you wrote your name on the back of the ticket and put it in a cigar box. And then when you had money, you'd go out and say, I need the box. And Mr. Bales would hand you the box, and you'd dig out all your tickets, and you would pay him.
My goodness, what an
It was unique.
Yeah.
And then downtown we had, I think it was called the Sweet Shop, which was kind of a greasy spoon. And that was about it. No pizza places. And the last year I was here, Colonel Sanders came. And,
oh, really?
It was out across on Main Street down. There's a drugstore located in that area now. I don't go down Main Street much. And but you had to have a car to get to it. And that was about the eating selection places.
And of course, no bypass, none of that kind of.
Oh no, no bypass, no fast foods.
Yeah.
You ate either in the grill or in the cafeteria.
Well, the two of you, I think I'm right on this, did not know each other well at Eastern, didn't date when you were here. How did the two of you get acquainted, Paul?
Well, Eva started teaching school in Anderson County the year before I graduated. She graduated in 1959, but when I came back to Lawrenceburg right after I graduated, then I met Eva, and we had a date or two, and it went from there on, you see.
And 3 months later, we married.
Oh my goodness.
We didn't. Our first date was for a basketball game, and that should have been a clue as to what our involvement with sports was going to be.
I want to ask you about both of your involvement in EKU athletics. Do you and Paul, I want to ask you this first. Do you all return to campus to attend a lot of games and related events?
Well, for football is concerned, we have now gone to 320 straight football games. That is home and away. And to answer your question, I do go to most of the basketball games at home, and occasionally we'll go on the road to maybe 1 or 2 games on the road during the season, but there's just too many basketball games to do that.
So 320 straight games.
Yes.
Somebody that we both know gave me a little clue that you had some kind of a record like that, but I hadn't heard the exact number. So we're talking roughly 32 years, I guess, that you've been doing that.
Not quite, because there's playoff games. There used to be a lot of playoff games. And there's 11, 12 games most years. I don't know the year we started.
So it would have been sometime in the 70s, I guess, that your streak.
80s. I think it's the 80s.
Early.
Well, that's
80s,
right.
80s.
That's the 80s are getting to be 30 years ago, aren't they?
Yeah.
So what caused you to get so involved in EKU football?
I've always liked football and so forth, and I played a little football and basketball in high school, but and of course Coach McBreer, Paul McBreer, is the one that I came over here when I was about 10, 11 years old. I saw to see my first Eastern game, you see. So I've always enjoyed athletics, and I still do.
So tell us a little bit about that experience of, I mean, there must be a lot of people that you normally travel with when you go to games, and I hear about those bus trips. Are you on those, or?
Most of the time we drive. Every once in a while we do the bus trip. I have a motion sickness problem, so most of the time we drive ourselves. I'll tell you how, Broadhead did not have a football team. And my first football game that I ever saw was here at Eastern, and Roy Kidd was the quarterback. And I saw it with my sister, and I fell in love with football. And I'm probably a bigger football fan than Paul is, because I really enjoy football. But on the trips, we have met so many people, and it's interesting meeting the boys' families and getting to know their families, and some of them have remained friends. And so many people that we have met over the years and unfortunately, once their sons graduate, they don't continue to attend the games, and I can't understand why, because we have such a wonderful football program here. And
Of course, a lot of those families are from quite a ways away from here.
yes.
I mean, Coach Kidd used to recruit a lot in Florida, didn't he? I don't know if they still do now or not, but.
I'd like to say that I've had the privilege of personally knowing 2 of the greatest coaches that I consider in America. One of them being Paul S. McBreer in basketball, and the other one is Roy Kidd in football.